you've ever wanted to know more about digital trust, have an interest in document and transaction security, or even how information is secured on the web, then you're in the right place. I'm Mike Hathaway, Chief Product Officer for Assertia, and welcome to this episode of Assertia On, our online series looking into hot topics in the world of digital trust. Today, I'm joined by Mason Meharry, Assertia's Chief Operating Officer. Mason, it's great to have you with us today.
Great to be here, and a great topic to be talking about today. Such an exciting time in the world. I think a lot of things are changing. Absolutely freaks you out as well, but there's so many great opportunities. So very important for us to be discussing trust in the digital world.
Indeed. So in today's edition, following recent news that Google's AI now has the ability to create videos that, quite frankly, look amazing, but can also talk, we're now going to be talking about how artificial intelligence and what it means for content creation and online trust. So this is not only an amazing breakthrough, but it's also a terrifying prospect for absolutely anybody, including ourselves, that create online content. So Mason, what are your initial thoughts on this new capability from Google?
Well, it's amazing to see what they're able to do and how realistic it is, and we've seen some of the funny AI generated adverts, featuring Tom Cruise and they're making him say things that he didn't say. But I think there's a serious side to it as well. There's new phrases like pig butchering, for example, which is where the criminals will fatten up the pig for a slaughter by actually engaging with somebody, pretending to be somebody else, and eventually defrauding them of money. We've seen one quite recently where there was a lady that thought she was engaging with Brad Pitt, as an example. He was sick, he was in hospital, and he needed money, and eventually she ended up transferring a huge sum of dollars to the fraudster's accounts. But in business, you tend to quite often laugh that off and you think, how can somebody fall for that? But the reality is that when you see crimes happening on a large scale, like the one that happened to Arup Engineering, where there was a video call from the supposed CFO, to a financial manager, which was supporting a spear phishing email, which actually led to payments being made of around £22 million. That is a serious crime that's being supported by this AI video technology. Probably the area when the penny really dropped for me, though, when I was chatting to a movie producer, and he was saying in the near future they'll not be hiring extras anymore for movies. They're just going to be making the people for the movies. So it's an end of an era in that industry, but there's also so many more things that we can do in terms of simulations and training for people. So it's exciting and scary again at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. I think you've definitely got to have your wits about you when in the online space. I mean, we've talked about this in quite a few presentations, on digital trust in the past. In the physical world, traditionally, you're visiting an office, you're going to a retailer, you're banking, you're meeting real people, so you can identify them with the brand because you've visited an office. You're seeing somebody that's in a suit or they're wearing the uniform of their employer, so they are genuine. But in the digital world, it's far from that straightforward. There's plenty of convincing websites that are being set up, as you say, online video content being created about individuals that, quite frankly, makes it very difficult to distinguish what you're reading, watching, listening, and interacting with is actually genuine. So we seem to be stuck in this perpetual world of zero trust online. I mean, what are your thoughts?
So it's a continual evolution for us dealing with this online world as well. If you think to your example of the real world, or the physical world, we pride ourselves on being streetwise. We know neighborhoods, we know people, we look at behavior, we look at expressions. I smiled a little bit when you mentioned wearing a suit, because we don't actually wear suits anymore. So that's not really an indicator of trust, but I understand what you're saying. So we've got all these factors that we are gathering, and on that we base our decision to trust somebody or not. And fundamentally there's your instinct which kicks in as well. So in the online world, we've also got to do these things. Our online neighborhoods are often defined and identified by TLS certificates, for example. So you've got to look for these things. You've got to see that it's a trustworthy site that at least exists. And another thing that you've got to look for is digital signatures, because any kind of online assertion actually requires a digital signature to be believable or authentic, and our instinct has to be that we've got to verify before we trust. That is the instinct that has to come to the fore. So we have to live in this world of zero trust, which sounds a little bit negative, but I prefer to call it streetwise trust. Verify before you believe online.
I think that's a great point, because a lot of the attacks that people are falling foul to are genuine, where people haven't necessarily had their wits about them, and like you say, to use your term, have their street smarts. They're working and often transacting in an online world where maybe it's not a transaction they're not conducting as frequently as they would do. So therefore, it is an alien environment, and their street smarts might not necessarily be guiding them because it's new territory for them. We're continually being bombarded with WhatsApp messages, text messages, phishing emails that are guiding us to make a transaction, make a transfer that we wouldn't ordinarily do, because a sense of urgency has been placed upon us. That's often how fraud begins. So definitely, I think it's a good practice for people to get into. It's not a natural posture, I think, for a lot of people out there. The AI and the way it's being used, and particularly with the creative industry, I think is going to make it harder for us to be able to circumnavigate this online world, but particularly when things are being put in front of us that actually look far more genuine than someone putting up a bogus phishing or farming website. So the creative industry leaders, they're up in arms over allowing AI to gain access to their work for those reasons at the moment. And given that we all want to make use of technology to help make our lives easy, AI is a great tool for that. But at the same time, retaining jobs, job security, how do we ensure that we're able to tell these things apart?
So it's an interesting thought, and if I think of my personal situation, I don't want to think that AI is going to remove my purpose in life, and even the enjoyment we get out of working, that is important for us to keep. Probably the best role for it is that what has increased is the amount of data that is around in the world, so it's actually really great to have this helper to make sense of all this data and get information out of it, so that you can act while you are doing jobs that you enjoy, so making you gainfully employed and productive with this as an assistant, But I think on the same time, it's also important that the tools that are being used by everybody, there's also some accountability for the actions of using these tools. So creators also have to be accountable for their actions when they are making these things. Sometimes it's funny, and sometimes it's not funny. Sometimes it swings political votes or incites civil unrest. So I think everybody needs to be accountable for the actions and the things that they're creating. It includes, obviously, human creators. I dread when AI starts creating things by itself on AI just for the sake of creating things, But I think at the end of the day, there's this balance of creativity using these AI tools, and also authenticity and accountability, that has to be there. And we've got to make sure that it's there in terms of regulations and guidelines. And fundamental to all of that is to make sure we can identify when something has been generated by AI and who does it belong to.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, AI, for me, working in the standard space with product management becomes a very useful tool to be able to go away and help with research activities. But it's not a direct replacement for having a member of the team there working with me. So there's definitely benefits to that. And I guess there are a couple of initiatives working in this space that aim to use crypto to help provide provenance to digital media. So this is online video, picture work, artwork, etc. So you've got people like the Content Creation Provenance and Authenticity Group, the C2PA, and then the Content Authenticity Initiative. I'm not sure if you've come across these groups or their work, but both look fascinating in their own right.
I think they are fascinating and also very important, So I think it's important for ourselves as a company to support the work that they're doing, and also other organizations to get involved. Attribution has always been important for creative work, because at the end of the day, that's how everybody gets paid. If you create something, you want people to know that it's yours. You don't want it to be copied. And therefore, tied to attribution is also authenticity, because you don't want people to copy your work either. So I think these concepts have always been there in other kinds of creative work. We just got to make sure they are there when they're online as well. But I think multiple sides to the story, especially it triggers the thought with me. That I'm a photographer myself, and I belong to some groups, like some wildlife photography groups, for example. And the rules of the group are it's got to be as you did it out of camera, so that's one of the important things. And then you see some of these fantastic shots that are totally unrealistic because there's been a lot of creative work has been applied to the photo, but it's absolutely impossible that somebody would have got that out of a camera, and that's quite irritating. It's not serious, but it is quite irritating, So I think when there's photos and videos that, with the public is relying on and can shift their opinion, it's even more important that something is identified as authentic from the device. And then on top of that, it must be identified by the artist that created it, very important aspects.
Yeah, so very much like how we use digital IDs to fight fraud today in the online world to provide protection for transactions, documents. I liken this as well to code signing. I'm creating an executable, a DLL that's got to be part of a software package, but I have to prove that it's genuinely from a particular software house or author, unaltered from point of inception, as it were. And that's used to provide security and provenance in the digital media space right now. But that means, to your point, the camera that you're using, the phone, the DSLR, whatever it's you're using, has to have a digital identity baked into it from the start to enable a digital signature to be created on the image right from the get-go and then applied right throughout the life cycle. If you're in an editing suite, you're doing manipulation, you're I guess it's on the editor or the person that's making the modification to then re-sign to say, yeah, I made these changes and it's authentic even from the point of modification. So something of a game changer, but surely this type of thing is the kind of silver bullet. If you're able to then apply a signature to every point of the life cycle that sets it apart from something that's machine generated, it's something of a game changer, right?
Yeah. And as you're mentioning, the digital ID, underpinned by PKI, Public Key Infrastructure Technology, has always been the best way to mark something as original, where you can verify the source and the integrity. So the technology is tried, tested, proven, been with us a long time. But I understand the problem is very difficult. Manufacturers have to, out of the phone, because that's the most prolific video and photo taking device, got to be able to sign the data. What is allowable for you to change without having to re-sign the data? Can you change the contrast? Can you change the brightness? Clearly, when you remove somebody out of a photo, you're actually making a new photo, and that has to be re-signed again. If you're doing that in the phone, does the phone sign it again that I have created this? So there's a lot of practical challenges to solve, but it's vital that something has to happen. So this kind of PKI technology and the digital signatures is plumbed into all good digital signature solutions. We use it in the document signing space so that we can prevent alteration of contracts. We can identify who's accountable for their part in a contract. Digital signatures are used in authentication solutions, so all over in European guidelines like EIDAS, it's quite prescriptive about qualified signatures and about how you identify sites and all of these, so it's really tried and tested technology. And I think it's going to be even easier for people to create their signature or authenticate to create their signature in the future. We're looking at mobile driver's license, which you can use to authenticate a signature, or just a push authentication on your phone. Yes, it is me that is altering this photo, and you end up with a product that is actually authentic and has the attribution to the author with all the good things. Yes, some people are not going to like it because they do want to create some mischief with the pictures they are creating, but I think the good far outweighs the few people that are not going to want to sign their name to something. Very important.
Definitely. I mean, there's space in the online world for both camps, but when you've got something as important as news outlets reporting on something going on in the world, you do want to make sure that it's from the genuine news outlet, not someone spreading fear and fakery online. But so equally, you've got people that are going to be using social media. They're going to be using the applications at their fingertips. The image manipulations built right into the phone these days. So you can take an image, as you said earlier, with your wildlife photography, make an online change immediately, and then publish it straight to social media. So I think there's ends of the spectrum where both things need to live, but definitely this again is a fine illustration of how versatile PKI and digital identities are. You know, not only are these digital identities from a trust infrastructure the foundation for digital business, but it goes way beyond that now. It kind of ultimately proves that PKI and digital identities are a foundation for a digital world. So with that said, that wraps it up for this Assertia On edition. Mason, really appreciate your time. I know that's valuable to you. We appreciate your insights. And to everybody listening, we hope you found this episode useful. As usual, if you have any questions or want to know more about Assertia products or what Assertia is doing in the digital trust and the digital signature space, please don't hesitate to get in touch with a member of our team. And we hope you will tune in to a future edition of Assertia On in the near future. Take care and bye for now.